The first minute of this program from January 3rd was the best 1 minute of AEW television I've seen in months, and it went steadily downhill from there. Do you even remember what the first minute was by the time they got to the end of it?
Was that the recap with the Samoa Joe interview spliced in?
Boom. Samoa Joe doing a pre-tape cold open, and that's that's a television term when it was normal television procedure from the start of television to play the opening theme, or whatever it may be, and then, go to the program. But then they started varying it up a little bit, and they started starting with a snippet of the program and then going to the opening theme, and we hear the theme from Gilligan's Island or whatever, and that became a cold open where we go cold into the program. And then Dusty Rhodes used to call it a hot open because he refused to have anything cold on his wrestling show. So he'd put on the format, hot open. But nevertheless, that was the best thing on this entire show. Because for 1 minute or maybe 90 seconds, I don't know, Samoa Joe spoke with conviction, had great material that was delivered in a fucking meaningful and believable way. He got revenge on MJF and took everything from him. And he said, you may be a scumbag, but I'm a heartless son of a bitch. And I'll take everything from anyone who tries to take this from me. He looks like a badass that means what he says. He's a giant fucking bulk of a man. And he sounds serious, and it was a great heel promo. On a real wrestling show, Samoa Joe being the world champion would probably make a difference in the business if he's being presented and presenting himself like that. But in the middle of this fucking muck, I don't know whether anything would make any difference. But Joe, if you said, take 90 seconds of this program that you would put on a show that you were fucking in charge of, I would take that interview and leave the rest of it. That's just me, though.
Looking at WWE with Roman Reigns and now AEW with Samoa Joe, should TNA look for a Samoan man named Joe?
Well, God damn it, that's where he began his descent into missing his best years trying to support that fucking company previously when they had 10 times the viewers they've got now. That's one of the unfortunate things about the wrestling business. Joe was good enough to have been in the Gunther spot in the WWE years ago, and he probably still is now, but they've gone through so many stops and starts with him, and he's been presented in all these substandard ways in secondary companies. And, he's not a spring chicken.
Well, I mean, that's a good comparison, actually, because the sad thing is, even though Joe's done a lot of great stuff, but I think you could still say Joe was best booked by Gabe Sapolsky. And what year was that?
Yeah, he was.
That was a long time. 2005, was that the end of it? 2004? Yeah.
That's the thing, is he was best booked by a guy that booked the stuff that almost nobody saw of his. And every time the more higher profile the company, the more flummox they get about using, and it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be that hard. And Dutch Mantell had it for that brief shining moment with him and Angle, and then Shitstain got back involved, and that all went to hell. But
can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you see Joe as a long-term solution? Someone who, let's say, Tony Khan did book him the way Gabe Sapolsky did book him in Ring of Honor. Do you see that as a long-term thing, or should he be a short-term thing to a Swerve Strickland or whoever the next champion is deemed to be?
Well, that's an essay question. And no, I don't.
Based on also what AEW needs versus what AEW wants to do. What AEW truly needs.
Well, I don't think it should be a couple of years, and that's no disrespect to Joe, but just because nothing lasts in that company to begin with. But also, I don't think we're talking about a couple of years, but I don't think you ought to just drop it to somebody. There ought to be some kind of goddamn coherent plan to all of this, and usually there is, but in AEW, there's barely never, or not. But the problem is contenders and positioning. Joe shouldn't be dropping it to Swerve unless they're going to switch Swerve babyface. But if they switch Swerve babyface, then will people still like him? Because right now he terrorizes children and engages in the breaking bones of the beloved baby faces, and they cheer him.
He's never been more popular.
He's never been more popular. So if he stops doing all that shit and becomes a baby face, then will they still like him? Because they've just taken over, the fans have taken over Tony's show because they can't make any sense out of the shit that he gives them. So with Joe being as talented a heel as he is, one would think that one of two things, either MJF, who apparently now is their top babyface at a time when MJF has never been less popular because he's their top babyface. How long is he going to be out? We don't know. Is he going to come back and that would be hopefully a big match to get revenge, or if it's going to be too long for that, more than 6 months or whatever the fuck, then do you build a new baby face? But who is that? Because how can you build a baby face when the people cheer all the heels for pissing in their fucking faces? And nobody cares that a baby face succeeds at anything in that company. So I don't know how to answer any of those questions. And I'll have a fucking brain tumor grow on the spot trying to figure it out, which is why I'm trying not to take this shit too seriously.
But but if they had contenders, Joe could work as a solution that isn't short term, because you'd be intrigued by all these matches and who's going to be the person to defeat Joe.
Yes. And that would be a normal thing you would do when you've got a big, physically imposing, dominating champion like that, is figure out who's going to be able to slay this dragon. And you could run, because who else? Nobody's going to talk better than Joe. And he can have good to great matches as long as it's not just so. I mean, I'm not going to say have 4 stars with pockets or some of these other guys, but with the top guys, he could have believable fucking matches instead of this gymnastics horse shit. So, but who knows what they're going to do, because now he worked with the top heel, but now the top heel is now Adam Cole, who's effectively a manager because he's injured, and his henchmen are all job guys until they just reveal themselves to not be job guys, which we'll get into in a second. And they're not even speaking nicely to each other. So I don't know what the fuck. How they're going to pull out of this tailspin.